Breitlander here, co-owner of KRAIN Luxury Real Estate.
And today I'd like to show you one of our top luxury listings.
Hello everyone, Sarah Breitlander here with KRAIN Luxury Real Estate, and today we're going to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that is because the person sitting beside me is a person that's going to help my clients' dreams come true. So today we're going to talk about whether it's even possible to get a mortgage in Costa Rica and what that looks like. For those of you who watch this channel, you know I always say cash is king in Costa Rica. And that's true, and it has been true for a long time, but things are changing for the better, and there are opportunities today that, quite frankly, my clients did not have 5 years ago or even 2 years ago. And this gentleman and his company is part of the reason why. So today I want to introduce Zach K. with 2nd Street. So Zach, welcome. Thank you so much for being here, and tell us a little bit about you and just your company and the background. Please.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me on. It's really a joy that I get to share this with you and with your clients and audience, so thank you.
You're very welcome.
So everybody, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Zach. I'm the founder and CEO of 2nd Street, the first reliable international mortgage lender in Costa Rica. I actually started the company about 2 years ago, is when I left my job. At the time, I had been working on Wall Street for about 7 years. Okay. I had spent the last 3 years at Elliott Management, which is one of the largest and oldest hedge funds in the world. Mm-hmm. At the time, we managed about $70 billion, and I was part of the investment team there. And I, during COVID, like a lot of you, were interested in buying a property in Costa Rica. It seemed like a cool thing to do. And I called an agent. It was someone down in Dominical. I forget who now.
Ooh, that's way down south.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I called in. I want to say this property was listed for maybe $600,000.
Okay.
And I asked, how much do I have to put down? And the agent said, $600,000.
Yeah.
And I asked, I think you might have misheard me. I was asking for the down payment amount, not the purchase price.
Yeah.
And she said, yes, it's $600,000.
And your heart broke.
Yeah, and that's when I was like, well, can you explain that? She's like, sir, there's no mortgage lending here. Nobody does that. You can't really go to the bank. You're a foreigner. You can't really go to the bank and get a loan here.
Yeah.
I mean, there aren't really other companies that do that. And so I didn't buy anything. I get the question all the time, do you own a house in Costa Rica? The answer has been no, because this didn't exist.
Right.
And that kind of led me down the path of understanding why this was the case. And ultimately, what I realized is, the reason mortgage lending hadn't come to Costa Rica is this is not the right business for local banks. Local banks
100%.
lend to locals. That is the core of their business, and that's what they've decided to focus on, which is fine. But the reason why it's been challenging for an American lender to come into the market here has always been a capital supply side problem. It's incredibly challenging to find the scale and amount of money that you need to launch a mortgage lender, especially when you're doing something out of the box.
Yeah.
Mortgages are the second largest asset class in the world behind the US Treasury.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
There's about $36 trillion of Treasury debt out there and about $15 trillion of US mortgage debt.
Wow.
And across that whole universe of all the investors who own those $15 trillion of US mortgages, none of them have a mandate to own mortgages issued in Costa Rica to Americans.
Right. Right.
And so there really isn't a home for this product, and as the lender, it's incredibly challenging to find where you get the capital backing for that.
For sure, and I see it twofold. One, where do you get the capital to even lend this money? And then number two, the US banks don't want to be here, and they don't want to take out a mortgage on a Costa Rica property. They don't know Costa Rica.
Nope.
Costa Rica is still very much wild, right? Prices that properties are purchased for is not even public information. So why in the world, no U.S. bank in its right mind would take that risk of loaning money? They don't know if the property is worth $500,000, $5 million, right? So it's how do you even, gauge that asset in terms of what it's worth? And then where do you find the capital? And I will say that there have been some groups that have tried to come down and lend, and a few clients have been able to utilize that lending to purchase a home, but what happens is they run out of capital. So they make 2 loans, 10 loans, whatever the amount, but there's a finite amount, and then they're out, and then no one else can get mortgages. So I feel like you figured it out in the sense you figured Costa Rica out and how to gauge the asset, and also you have the funding. And I think those years at the hedge fund obviously is why this is happening. So congratulations to you for doing it, and we're so glad you're here. And I know my clients are like, okay, tell me get into the details. So first of all, we can get mortgages. Our clients can get mortgages in Costa Rica. Who can apply? Who can you lend to? Not Canadians. Is that true? Does it have to be from the U.S.?
Yes. So
Okay.
the parameters for our lending are really simple. There's a few basic things to keep in mind.
Okay.
The first is that right now we lend to U.S. citizens and U.S. permanent residents.
Okay.
So someone could be Canadian, like let's say you have someone from Toronto who lives in New York, has a green card, and wants to buy a second home here. That person can
will
absolutely
qualify.
borrow from Second Street.
Awesome.
Now, the only thing that person couldn't do is borrow to buy a primary residence here, because they would lose their green card if they bought a primary
That makes
residence here.
sense. Okay.
So they could buy a second home or an investment property, and a U.S. citizen could buy all of the above, a primary, second, or an investment home.
Okay, perfect. And then also in terms of eligibility, and this kind of relates on how do you determine, who gets loans and who doesn't, who's eligible, what factors do you consider? Because a lot of my clients are retirees or they're small business owners, and so it's not like they're earning an income from an employer. Are they eligible? And then what factors do you consider when you consider loans?
Yep. Absolutely is the answer.
Great.
All of those people are eligible to apply with us, and we have already granted loans to people who fit all of those descriptions.
Wonderful.
So our qualifications and guidelines are almost perfectly reflective of what you would expect from a pretty typical mortgage program in the United States.
Okay.
Our innovation has really much less so been about reinventing lending and underwriting standards, because we're lending to Americans, and underwriting standards for Americans are already pretty well vetted and understood. We didn't need to reinvent that wheel.
Right.
So if you've ever gone and gotten a mortgage in the United States, you already know exactly how it works to get a mortgage with Second Street.
Okay.
The process and requirements are really 99.9% identical.
That's wonderful. And I get that question a lot in real estate. What is the process of buying real estate in Costa Rica? And there are a few nuances and a few differences, but for the most part, the process is very much like buying real estate in the US, and my clients love that. So the fact that not only is the real estate process similar, but the mortgage process similar makes it really just easy in terms of what to expect, right? And more comfortable for my clients.
Yeah, at least the options are now. That wouldn't have been true not so long ago before we launched. But that's exactly right.
And what are the factors you look at? I assume credit score, for example, is a big one.
Yeah, it's all the basic stuff. So, we're going to be looking at your credit score. This isn't a subprime program. So, we're looking for people with generally good credit. It's nothing unattainable. And it's actually incredibly rare that we run into clients in Costa Rica who don't meet our credit guidelines.
Okay.
So your FICO score is something that we look at. Like any other lender, we're also looking at your debt to income ratio, and we're looking at the loan to value that you're looking to take out on the property.
Perfect.
So it's all generally pretty standard stuff. If you really get into the weeds of how mortgage lending works, there can be slight differences in not necessarily eligibility, but let's say you're buying an investment property versus a second home, you could see small differences in, let's say, your interest rate, for example.
Right.
And that's standard. That's how things work in the United States as well. So, again, just very reflective of how it would work in the US.
And let's talk about interest rates. Are these fixed rate loans? Like what types of loan products? And then related to that is the time period. Because we do have something here called seller financing, which is an exception to the cash is king rule, which I love because it's the only other way. But those loan periods are for like 1 year to, I've had a seller make a deal doing 7 years, but that's not quite long. So what are your, what does the interest rate looks like, and what does the time period look like for these loans?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really proud to be able to say that we have brought, I think, the best ever rates and terms that you've ever seen on a loan product in Costa Rica. Frankly, even in the local lending market, if you compared what a Costa Rican could get from a bank here, I have Costa Ricans already asking me for loans.
That's
Unfortunately, I cannot do those yet.
Right, because you're set up like the U.S. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, right.
And the reason we're able to offer fantastic rates and terms is because of our capital backing. So I will quickly go back to what you said earlier. How is Second Street actually funding all these things? Because you're right, mortgage is an incredibly capital intensive business.
Right.
If I want to capture what I think is, let's say, about 10% of the market in Costa Rica, I'd need to be lending out $500 million a year.
Right.
Where are you going to get all that capital?
Serious cash.
It's real money. Your rich uncle is not giving you that kind of money. He might help, but it's not going to be enough. And so really what you need to do is you have to be able to tap a very serious financial institution in the United States, and you need to be able to tap capital markets. And thankfully, given my background, that's something that we were able to do. And so I told you I started this company in 2023. We did not start lending in Costa Rica until the beginning of this year. And the reason for that is it took us a long time to find who the right capital partner was going to be. And I think we may have found really maybe the only big fund on Wall Street who would actually do this with us. But they came on and they've been an incredible partner so far.
It's a smart business it's a smart move from your side as well. And I'm really glad to hear that you spent that time thinking about how it's going to work and didn't jump right in, because I think that's where past companies have kind of fallen short, and that's why they ran out of money. So I appreciate your due diligence in setting all of this up.
And so to answer your question, having institutional...
the interest rates. Let's get back to the time here. Yes.
So what having institutional capital allows us to do is to offer the best rates and terms that is much more reflective of what you would find in the US than anywhere else.
Okay.
And so Second Street offers, as our core product, the bread and butter American flag 30-year fixed rate,
That's amazing.
no prepayment penalty mortgage. That is our flagship product. I mean, really, it's the only product that we offer at the moment because it's the best product. If you look at data from the Federal Reserve for 2024, 92% of Americans who took out a mortgage took out a 30-year fixed rate mortgage.
Yeah.
That's what people want.
Just
and so
had a call.
That's what we've been able to deliver.
Just had a call 2 days ago, and beautiful person from Colorado, asked about a 30-year mortgage, and I said, I'm going to have more answers to you in about 2 days after I interview Zach.
Awesome.
But you're right, they do ask that question, and I have to break a lot of hearts. When I hop on a call, one of my first things I have to say is cash is king here. You're not going to get a mortgage, and I hate that. And another reason that I'm so glad that you're in this business and industry with us is because one thing that's never set well with me, and there are very few things in Costa Rica that doesn't sit well with me, but one thing is that I feel because this cash king rule exists, is that it can be perceived that Costa Rica is reserved for the wealthy, or people with money. And that's not what Costa Rica is about. Costa Rica is like the opposite of that. It's about nature, and you can enjoy things for absolutely free. And so the fact that you're bringing this product and it's going to be more attainable for more of my clients is just really, truly just like a personal satisfaction for me. So thank you for doing this.
So on that, I'd love to share just a quick story about that, because I completely agree with you. And that's one of the things I've been really excited about is this is now a much more accessible product. Right. So a lot of Second Street's clients are wealthy people. There's no getting around that. Today we closed on a $1 million loan on a $1.3 million home in Nosara, and the buyer of that home has money. Has money.
Right.
But the second loan that we ever did in Costa Rica was to someone who lives in California, works as a travel nurse, and she was a first-time home buyer. This is the first property she had ever bought.
Oh my gosh,
and
that's a cool story.
We made it possible for her.
Yeah.
It wasn't a huge property. It was something in like the low hundreds of thousands purchase price. We gave her, a loan towards the low end of what we do.
Yeah.
But she was ecstatic,
That's
and she was
amazing.
able to access this dream that previously had been completely closed off.
Yeah. What are the limits of your lending? Do you have minimums and maximums?
Yeah. So generally, in terms of a minimum, we are looking for something at least around $200,000 in terms of a loan amount.
Okay.
So it's not a particularly onerous minimum. And in terms of a maximum, we don't have a hard max.
Okay.
I'd say anything up to $2 million is a no-brainer.
Okay.
And we can certainly do things over 2 million. It just gets looked at a little bit more
Right.
closely, which frankly is no different than what you would see in the US.
Okay.
Jumbo loans get
Perfect.
a little more scrutiny.
Perfect. And then let's talk a little bit about your fees. How do you get paid? What does that look like? Are there fees up front? I mean, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So first I'll just start with, a bit about where our rates are today. So we are bringing 30-year fixed rate product to Costa Rica. There are no prepayment penalties associated with this loan.
Wonderful.
So it works exactly the way your conventional 30-year mortgage in the US would work.
Right.
If rates go down in the future, you refinance at any time and there's no penalty to pay off the old loan.
Okay.
So you really do have that rate protection.
Okay.
Right now, our rates are starting less than 2% above where you would get a mortgage in the US today. So right now, a mortgage in the US, it's higher than it's been the past few years,
Right.
is about 7%. Our rates right now are starting at 8.75.
That's amazing because there are one other very new product other than seller financing. A select few Costa Rica banks have decided to lend to U.S. citizens. I mean, it is such a new product that we all hold hands and go down the road together. A bit of a problem because I think the banks don't even know how it works, and so there's a huge communication problem. But the other thing I say is just be prepared for the interest rates. I mean, the interest rates are higher.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes if that's your only option, that's what you have to do. But I mean, throwing out the numbers you just threw out is a real win for this environment. So that is a great rate. Yeah.
And I'll say too, because in the US, you'll see lenders all the time advertising rates from whatever, but really you go apply and it's something very different. That's not the case here.
Okay.
When I say that our rates start at 8.75%, obviously not every client gets our floor rate, but the vast majority of our clients are getting really close to it.
Okay, that's great. That's great. And then how does it work in terms of obviously in the US, you have a pre-approval, you're pre-approved for, that doesn't even happen here yet. But how does your company work?
Yeah, so we absolutely do pre-approvals, and
Really?
we always recommend that as the first step in the process. Because if you have a client or you're looking to buy a property, you want to know what your budget is before you go
100%.
shop for stuff, right? I mean,
yeah.
you don't want to go look at $1 million homes, but you can only afford $500,000 ones, and
Right.
vice versa. You don't only want to go shop for $600,000 homes when you can afford $1.5 million homes,
Right. It
right?
makes sense.
Yeah,
Yes.
it makes sense to do. And so we absolutely offer pre-approvals.
Okay.
They're really fast to do. The process is you talk to one of our loan officers. They answer all your questions first because nobody should move forward with a financial product before they really get exactly what it is. On that call, you're ready to go. Raj, our senior loan officer, sets up the client into an application. Takes about 15 minutes to fill out. It's pretty much the same as a mortgage application you'd see in the States. And then we ask for your documentation.
Okay.
The reason we do that documentation at the initial step is because we do what's called a fully verified pre-approval. So in the States, you can often get a loan approval that is just based on what you, the client, tell your lender. The problem with that is when your lender actually goes to underwrite you and evaluate you, a lot of the times what people tell their lender ends up not being reflected in
change.
documentation.
It could change.
Sometimes it can change. Sometimes people are thinking about their cash flow as opposed to the income that goes on their tax return, which is what their lender ultimately cares about. And sometimes people just overestimate or underestimate how much they earn and what's reflected on their documentation. Yeah. And so we ask for all of that up front because when we give a pre-approval to a client, we want both the realtor and the client to know that they've actually already gone through the entire process up front.
Yeah.
And it's fast. The documentation that we ask for is the same as what any US mortgage lender is going to ask for.
Okay.
And once the client gives us the docs, we usually have a pre-approval letter turned around, of course, if they qualify, within 24 hours.
Honestly, it's not only great for the potential buyers, but for the potential sellers. You don't want to go through this whole process of putting a home under contract and then the buyer can't perform because they didn't have all the documents in place. What is when you're going through this process? What is the timeline for this underwriting?
Yeah, so our entire loan process from end to end, we work within the pretty typical closing time frame for a Costa Rican property transaction.
Okay.
So from initial application all the way to closing, of course, assuming the client is getting us what we need to be able to take each next step. We get our transactions done in 45 days or less from start to finish.
That's great.
And
Okay.
that's been incredibly
That's
consistent.
great. Yeah.
Yep.
That's like lightning speed in Costa Rica time.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah. Okay, that's wonderful. So we have the interest rates, we have the timing of the loan, how much time it takes to get the loan. I think this is fabulous. What am I missing? What are other clients asking?
You asked a question about closing costs.
Yes.
Which is a great question.
Yes.
So obviously, like
Yes,
any
your
lender,
fees, how you get paid. Yes.
yeah. So of course, like any lender, there are closing costs. I think what's great about doing a transaction with Second Street is, forget what the lender charges versus third-party fees. Let's look at it all together. Because at the end of the day, if you're a client, the only number that you care about is the number that has to leave your bank account to close on a transaction.
What you're paying.
Right. And when you do a mortgage loan with Second Street, you end up paying closing costs that in most of our transactions are anywhere from the same to only a little bit more, maybe like half a point to a point above what you would pay if you did an all cash transaction.
Okay.
And so, I think we've seen most of our clients realize, hey, I'm able to get access to 30-year fixed rate financing, and my closing costs at the end of the day, they pretty much look like what they would be if I was buying cash.
Okay.
And what a few people have learned is that if you're buying a property, and if you're buying a very expensive property, even if you take out a small loan that's kind of at a low loan to value, you could actually save money on closing costs relative to closing in cash.
Interesting.
And so it ends up being, I think, a really powerful thing for our clients.
Perfect. And then what happens if the deal doesn't close? Like, would a client be out of pocket any cash, up front if the deal did not come to fruition based on financing?
So we, of course, have had, loan processes that we've started, and then for, whatever reason, people always have their reasons. They decided not to go through with the purchase. They had already been pre-approved. They went through our whole process. They weren't charged a single dollar. So there is absolutely no cost to apply with Second Street. We have, at least right now, on our website, I believe in our FAQ we talk about our application fee, which is seriously a misnomer. We need to rename it because it is not paid when you apply. It is only paid at closing if you close.
Okay.
So if you do not close on a loan with Second Street, you will not be at $1.
That's amazing. I love that. It's like a breath of fresh air, quite honestly. I feel like you're big on no hidden fees. You are the real deal. What you say is what you do, and I just really appreciate that. This is fantastic. I have a million other questions, but we only have so much time. But we should do some more videos because I know our clients are going to be interested. How can our clients reach you, Zach?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Plug the company.
Yes, okay, fine. Twist my arm. So if you want to get a hold of Second Street, my best advice is to go on our website. We have a really simple website. We have, I think, a lot of really great information on it as well.
I was on there.
And a
It's
really
nice.
robust FAQ section.
Yeah.
But you will see when you go on our website, on the home page, top right corner, and in a few other places, a blue button that says pre-qualify. If you click that button, it'll take you to a really brief survey. You just punch in your contact information. That's all we're asking for. And the contact info for your agent. So if Sarah's representing you, you'll put in Sarah Breitlander, KRAIN, and her contact as well, so we know who you're working with.
Okay.
You press submit, and then, usually within a few hours, our loan officer will reach out to set up a call with you.
That's great.
And then, like I said earlier, the first step is Raj is going to reach out to you. He'll set up a call, just so you can kind of understand the product.
Yeah.
You're going to have questions. I
Yeah.
promise you're going to have questions.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
taking a mortgage out in Costa Rica. You should have questions.
Right.
And so you'll talk to Raj. He'll answer all of those. And then on that call, if you're ready to move forward, he can get you started the application or send you the link and you can start it whenever you're ready.
That's great. I think I already have a client for you. the client that I just spoke to.
Awesome.
But that's great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing this information. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about this. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel. Hit the like button if you found this helpful, and we will see you in Costa Rica. Ciao for now, and pura vida.
Pura vida.